This looks familiar. You know, I have some sort of knack at this kind of thing. Whether it be the gaming PC I ran up on, to just literal bits and pieces of every electronic under the sun. I just find interesting and valuable stuff on the side of the road way too easily. So, what's the story on this one? I found it sitting outside someone's home business during a trip to the beach. It is very dirty and is covered in a ton of caked on dust, but I don't see any other reason for why it wouldn't work. Maybe they threw it out because they didn't want it anymore. Maybe they took it for a swim in the ocean. Or maybe something went terribly wrong inside this home computer. We will open it in a little here to see what might be the answer. But first, let's clean and investigate this PC. At a glance, we know that this is a Dell Vostro, just a standard run-of-the-mill micro-tower PC for all your home office needs. Looking at the front two stickers, though, we learn it was made around the Windows 7 era, and it appeared to have some sort of 3rd Gen i5. One of the top stickers confirms that it was made in 2012, November 27th. That's actually pretty good. We haven't opened it yet, but if that i5 is fast enough, and if this computer even works for that matter, we could make a nice budget gaming PC with very little money invested. Let's just not get too excited though, since the cleaning process will take a little while. The outside of the PC doesn't necessarily need to be clean in order for the PC to run, but we don't just not want to take care of this guy, you know? Plus, from how apparent it is that this is hard to clean, this is giving me a bad feeling as to what's to come. The dirt or whatever that's on these side panels is almost concrete-like and isn't washing off easily. Like, I can literally scrub for 10 minutes straight and it all won't come out. So multiple passes are going to be necessary if I want this thing to look sparkly clean. Also, upon cleaning out the front I/O, which was very stuffed, full of dust and concrete or whatever this is, I noticed that the far right USB port was completely broken. Like the PCB was broken off and it looked like one of the pins was bent inwards. Not good. This could be or the singular reason that this PC was put on the side of the road, since sometimes a broken I/O port can be all it takes to put down a computer for good, unless you resort to soldering on a new one. But if this is the case, we can just disconnect those USBs from the board once we start cleaning the inside of it. Which, by the way, maybe the real culprit is the one that is blatantly missing from our case. This isn't a big deal since I can just buy a cheap power supply online, just throw it in, but because our PSU is missing, bigger questions about what happened inside this PC, whether it be if a component was damaged due to a power failure or whatnot, starts to become more openly possible. We will see about that later though. Now that this PC is mostly clean on the outside, let us go ahead and open it up to clean our certainly less stellar and hopefully working insides. Oh god. I'm going to show a better angle in a moment, but first let's look at what parts we have. Before we see the layer of dust sitting at the bottom of this PC, we don't have a boot drive, but everything else seems to be here besides our PSU. Which is fine if we're going to replace that later, since storage is at an all-time low price right now. First, let's see what RAM we have though. We have a singular stick of DDR3GB Nanya RAM clocked at 1600 MHz. Not bad at all, despite the fact I'm sure our board will not be able to run anything past 1333 MHz, but still, this is pretty good. All we need is another cheap 4GB stick for $10 or something along those lines to be able to use this budget esport gaming office PC. Man, what a mouthful. All that matters is that our 3rd Gen i5 is fast enough to keep up and not bottleneck us too much. So let's go on ahead and take off the cooler. Okay, let me just pull one of my lights closer here because it is, how you say, wonderfully covered in dust and dirt and just, okay, this is fine. We will deal with that later. For now, let's see what CPU we have. And luckily, even though you can't see it very well, we have an i5-3450, a relatively decent 4-core CPU clocked at 3.1 GHz with a boost to 3.5 GHz. The CPU doesn't get too hot either, and our TDP is only 77 watts, which means the stock cooler is plenty for our system. However, I feel like it wasn't doing anything the last time it was being used since, well, you know. So we will have to clean it and get the dried up thermal paste off the bottom of it before we can reinstall. But before that, we should probably clean as much of the inside of this PC as we can. So this means I should probably put on a mask and some gloves before I move forward. And before anyone in the comments say I should have done this outside and bought a proper air compressor tool instead of the canned air that I'm using, I couldn't go outside to film this one because it was too dark at the time of filming, and I had this came from the last side of the road PC video. So I felt like using it all up before spending money on a reusable compressed air tool. Remember, my channel is called Budget Bin for a reason. Anywho, after getting the case as clean as possible, it was on to the ASMR segment of this video, because this cooler is definitely disgusting. It was pretty challenging to unscrew the fan from the heatsink since it was all at an angle, but I eventually got it off. Delicious. This will make for a great snack later. Anyways, the more I cleaned the heatsink and the fans of the PC, the more I started to realize that all of this concrete-like material might be dried out clay dust, which would explain why it is so difficult to clean off the case and its components. It was probably dust from a kiln or from just pottery over the decade that this PC was forced to be near. And this would explain the splatter consistency on the sides of the case and how thick the dust is in the computer itself. I guess the small business I picked it up from made vases or pots or something. I don't know. What I do know though is that this is a big mess, so I need to clean up my table before I can move any further. Man, I really hope this PC works after all this. So, after getting everything as pristine as possible, it was time to finish off cleaning this heatsink and reattach its fan. I literally soaked up this dried up thermal paste in isopropyl alcohol, but it still wouldn't soften up. I could scrub and scrub and scrub, but nothing. I had to resort to scratching it off, which still took some time to break it down, but eventually it did the job. So, with that all done, I could now re-screw on the fan, painfully, apply some fresh thermal paste, and get it screwed back onto our motherboard. Alright, everything is put back in and reinstalled. But we still need power before we can at least see if this thing posts. We could throw in a power supply that would be very unnecessary for this budget build, but then it would defeat the whole point of all the work we have made pinching pennies. This is why I bought a used Seasonic PSU for $27.84. It is only 300 watts, but has a 80 plus bronze rating, so it's actually not bad. Plus we know we are definitely getting 288 watts from the 12-volt rail, which isn't too subpar since most of our cheap video card options won't have a large power draw anyways. So we can easily decide what GPU will go great with our build later on. Everything plugs in very snugly and fits as if it was the OEM PSU that this PC came with. All that's next to do is see if we can get to a BIOS of sorts. And, of course, this wasn't going to be that easy. So, how are we going to troubleshoot this? Well, I went ahead first with pulling out some front I/O headers like the USB since that might be causing the main issues as I theorized before. But that didn't do much. The PC kept flashing yellow and beeping 5 times in succession, which I was able to easily look up solutions for, and thankfully, Dell's troubleshoot guides online help you every step of the way. But all I had to do was read one of them that specifically caught my eye and made me think, could it really be that simple? Okay, I know you guys can't see it because I can't afford a better camera, or place to even shoot for that matter currently, but the code I was receiving, well, it could be a million things, said that the CMOS battery for the clock on our board could be dead. I looked and saw that it was installed upside down. Amazing. Someone definitely troubleshooted this guy before, it seems, thought the battery was the issue, took it out, put it back in, and when they tried to troubleshoot some more, they ran into no solution and even more problems than they originally had. Crazy. Well, after putting it back in correctly and then having to replug in all my IOs because it still wasn't posting, this happened. Success. So, I think this PC, without a doubt, works now. All that's next is to decide what upgrades it will get and what games it will play, but I'll leave that for another video. So let's wrap this one up for now. What a fun PC this one was. It sucked to a degree, but it was very satisfying to see this end result. Now to decide what we will turn it into. What do you guys think? Should I spray paint the outside after giving it another nice cleaning to make it look more eye-catching? Should I try to make a sub-sleeper with some oddball parts? Or should I just keep it simple and make it a fun esport PC? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, like it. If you want to see more like this one, subscribe. And as always, thanks for watching.